When you think of a family tree, you probably picture a simple record of ancestors. But what if a family tree was crafted not just to record history, but to send a really radical message? Well, today we're diving into one of the most famous genealogies ever recorded, and we're going to uncover why its most unusual, even scandalous, parts might just be the whole point. Okay, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at why this family tree just shatters all the traditional rules. Then we'll meet 4 pretty unexpected ancestors and dig into the source's interpretation of their names. From there, we'll pivot to Joseph's personal crisis and his ultimate choice, before tying it all together to unpack the central message. So what even makes a family tree controversial? Is it about who's left out? Or is it about who was surprisingly put in? In this case, it is absolutely the latter. All right, Section 1, the unconventional family tree. You see, before we can get to the controversial names, we first have to understand the rules this genealogy seems to be breaking. We need to set the stage for why its structure was so unusual for its time. So in ancient Jewish culture, a genealogy was a huge deal. It was kind of like your resume and your passport all rolled into one. It proved your heritage, your place in the community. For Jesus, its purpose in the Gospel of Matthew was to establish his credentials, right? To connect him directly to the patriarch Abraham and the royal line of King David. But right away, there's this huge anomaly. In a patriarchal record where women were almost never named, Matthew's genealogy lists 5 of them. And what's really fascinating is which women were chosen for this very rare honor. And that brings us right to the heart of the controversy, our second section on these unexpected ancestors. I mean, if your goal was to create a perfect, pristine, royal lineage, the source material argues that the choice of women here is, well, it's baffling. It points out that 4 of them had backgrounds that, by the standards of the day, were deeply problematic. Now, this slide lays out what our source calls the strikes against these women. You've got Tamar, a Gentile, meaning a non-Jew, who was involved in an incestuous deception. Then there's Rahab, also a Gentile, a prostitute from a city that was destined for destruction. Ruth, another foreigner from Moab. And finally, Bathsheba, whose adulterous affair with King David led to murder. According to this interpretation, these are not just little footnotes. Their controversial stories are being put front and center for a reason. So why? Why include these women? Well, the source we're looking at argues it was completely intentional. It suggests that what might seem like thorns on the family tree are actually meant to be seen as blossoms of blessing. And this quote from the source material gets right to the core of its argument. See, the interpretation really hinges on this idea that God's grace is being showcased through these seemingly unworthy people, turning their stories into a powerful display of divine love. Let's look at how this builds out. The source finds this deep theological meaning in the actual names of these women. Tamar, meaning palm tree, comes to symbolize stability. Rahab, which means wide, points to the broadness of God's grace for everyone. Ruth, a friend, foreshadows Jesus' role as a friend to sinners. Bathsheba, daughter of complete satisfaction, points to finding fulfillment in him. And even Mary, whose name is interpreted here as their rebellion, represents how humanity's rebellion can be transformed into devotion. Now the story pivots, because it's not just about these women from the distant past. The genealogy builds to a very real, very immediate human crisis, one faced by Joseph. I mean, just imagine this for a second. Joseph is betrothed to Mary, which is a commitment as legally binding as marriage. Then he finds out she's pregnant, and he knows for a fact the child isn't his. In that culture, this was an absolute catastrophe, a moment of deep personal betrayal and crushing public shame. And this slide just illustrates his dilemma perfectly. On the one hand, the law was severe. It could mean public shaming, even death by stoning. But on the other hand, you see Joseph's compassion. He's described as a just and righteous man, and he decides to end the engagement quietly to spare Mary's life and her reputation. His true character is revealed in this quiet, merciful choice. And right here, our source offers this really profound reframing of Joseph's crisis. It suggests this wasn't just some random tragedy. No, it was a divinely orchestrated test, designed to prepare him for an extraordinary mission he couldn't even imagine yet. His shattered dreams were actually the building blocks for something way bigger. This leads us right into our 5th section, a heavenly mission accepted. So how does Joseph go from personal devastation to accepting this divine calling? Well, according to the text, the answer comes to him in a dream. An angel appears and just completely flips Joseph's understanding of everything. He's told the child is divine, that he must go ahead and marry Mary, and that he has to name the boy Jesus, which means Jehovah is salvation. The mission suddenly becomes crystal clear. This child is the savior his people have been waiting for. And Joseph's response is just remarkable. Look at the speed and the completeness of it. He doesn't second guess, he doesn't hesitate. He wakes up, he immediately obeys, he takes Mary as his wife, and later he names the child Jesus. It's just this powerful sequence of immediate, unwavering faith in action. So in the end, Joseph's story becomes this incredible testament to faith. He sets aside his personal plans, his reputation, and his own, very understandable hurt, all to embrace a divine calling. Okay, let's bring all of these threads together. What is the central message that starts to emerge when we combine the stories of these controversial women with the story of this righteous man facing a crisis? Well, according to this interpretation, the message is one of just radical grace. The inclusion of Gentiles and women with scandalous pasts is meant to show that God's grace isn't limited by our human standards. The lineage is seen as intentionally imperfect to really hammer home this theme of redemption. The argument is that everyone, from Rahab the prostitute to Joseph the righteous man, is in need of a savior. And maybe most powerfully, it suggests that God actually uses our brokenness and our shattered dreams to fulfill his greatest plans. This quote from the source really distills the entire explainer down to its core message. The point of the genealogy isn't just ancient history, it's presented as a timeless promise of salvation that's available to anyone, no matter what their background is. And that really is the big takeaway. The scandalous, rule-breaking, unconventional nature of this family tree, it's not a bug, it's the feature. It's designed from the ground up to be a portrait of a grace that reaches the outsider, the sinner, and the brokenhearted. It all leaves us with a final thought to chew on. When we approach ancient texts, not just as historical records, but as stories that are rich with symbolic meaning, what new layers of understanding can we uncover? What do we find when we really look for the message that's hidden within the names?